This webinar session uh, on lean with mean. It's an interesting topic. Aside from the rhyme and wordplay, mean is coming up as a very strong technology stack for building software fast, and we believe that's what lean startups need. And that's the focus of today's conversation. The presenter for today is Mayuresh. Mayuresh is a technology enthusiast. He's involved today in helping early stage startups, find their way through the technology riddle, and he's also been down this path himself of startups and so on. So he indeed speaks from personal experience. Before we begin and I hand it over to Mayuresh, I just wanted to cover a few logistics. So one is that this presentation is being recorded, and so in a few days after this webinar concludes, you will see it on our YouTube channel, which can also be accessed through our website www.synerzip.com. There is an opportunity for everybody to ask questions through the questions panel, and we don't necessarily want you to hold back till the very end. So feel free to ask those questions, and as the conversation progresses, I'll find a way to, or we'll find a way to sort of pause and take up any questions. So with that, let me hand it over to Mayuresh, and let's get started. So Mayuresh, over to you.
Hi everybody, this is Mayuresh Padke, and I will be talking about lean with mean today. So what is lean and lean with mean? We have heard a lot about mean, we have heard a lot about lean. The words sound very good together, right? And they are rhyming as well. But do these things really work together very well? So today in this webinar, we will explore how the mean stack can be leveraged in a lean startup and whether it really helps in a lean startup. So let's start by taking a look at what is mean. So mean stack is a collection of JavaScript based technologies which play very well together and are used for developing web applications. So mean stack basically consists of an AngularJS on the client side to develop single page applications, Express framework on the server to provide REST API. The Express runs on Node.js server, and MongoDB is used as a persistent store or database for storing data. The interesting point in this stack is that all the communication between entities happen via JSON, and the data is also stored in JSON. So this is a full stack which uses a single language, which is JavaScript, and also stores objects in a single format, which is the JavaScript object notification format. All these technologies have been around for quite some time. Especially Mongo and Node have been used in production systems for a long time. Angular is also nearly becoming the choice for developing client-side apps. But so people did use many of these technologies to develop their web stacks, but the term mean really came into prominence around April 2013 when Valery Karpov used it on his blog. In May 2013, Linovate hired Amos Haviv, and together they developed they published a basic boilerplate code for mean stack as mean.io. This was published as open source. Later, in around February 2014, Amos Haviv left Linovate, and since it was an open source project, he forked mean.io and created MEAN.JS. And MEAN.JS is currently one of the most popular boilerplate or frameworks that developers love when they want to deploy mean stack. So today when I talk about mean stack, I will use MEAN.JS as my boilerplate of choice. So MEAN.JS gives you a full stack JavaScript solution, and basically it has a lot of generators inbuilt, so they help you to get started and avoid useless grunt work and the common pitfalls, and all the applications are very well organized with MEAN.JS. So MEAN.JS is not just the 4 main components, that is Mongo, Express, Angular, Node, but apart from these it's a whole ecosystem. So there is npm and bower used for package management, grunt used as a task runner, also to run servers and everything. Yo is used as a code generator. There are other components like Passport for authentication, Bootstrap for the responsive CSS, Karma, Mocha and Jasmine for automated tests, Heroku and Docker for deployment, Travis for continuous integration. So when we talk about MEAN.JS, all these components together make a good ecosystem, and MEAN.JS generates boilerplate for ease of use of all these things together. So now that we have taken a look at MEAN.
So Mayuresh, I just wanted to stop you here because we have some very interesting questions coming up, and I do want to remind the attendees one more time. You should feel free to post your questions as soon as possible. Don't hold back. So one question that comes up is the way you sort of painted the picture. It appears like something that would work well for a web application, and the question is that for startups that are mobile first, what does MEAN.JS mean for those companies? How do you handle interaction with mobile devices, and is there any component here that addresses mobile devices?
That's a great question. So yeah, so MEAN does support mobile-based development. So first of all, all the UI that is generated for the web apps uses Bootstrap, which provides a responsive UI which works well on mobile screens as well as desktop browsers. The backend is a pure REST API, so any mobile apps can use this REST API and they can build out the apps. Also, for things like push notifications, there are ready-made Node modules available like Node GCM and Node APN, which make it very easy to generate push notifications onto mobile devices. So using these kind of technologies, we can use MEAN stack and have a good product which runs on the mobile devices as well.
So and more specifically, if somebody were to make native iOS apps and Android apps, they would have to build that outside of MEAN, and our MEAN stack would simply talk to them through the REST API and through the push notification service. Is that right?
Right, you are correct, Ashish. So that's the way it would happen.
Okay. So hopefully that answers the question.
Generated automatically. The mobile app won't be generated automatically by the MEAN stack.
Okay.
Going forward, so let's see what we mean. What is a lean startup that we mean here? So there are many ways lean startups are defined. So there is a lot of literature nowadays where people talk about lean startups. So what we will follow here is a lean startup is basically something wherein the startup is looking at developing customers, putting customers first, and developing a product iteratively so that the customers get the features that they want. So typically a startup would think that, okay, this is a great feature, let's develop it and get a ready product out to market, and then sometimes they find that the customers did not want that product in the first place. But what a lean startup would do typically is they would start with a hypothesis, go to customers, validate the hypothesis, build some features in the product, validate again with the customers and so on, and iterate till they have a good market fit. Now that we have set a base for what is mean and what is lean, so let's take a look at a typical life cycle of lean startup and see how mean can fit into that life cycle. So a typical startup life cycle would go through problems, finding a problem solution fit, finding a product market fit, and the growth stage. So in the problem solution fit, the startup would validate whether users are really hurting from the problem that the startup is trying to solve, and whether the perceived solution really solves the problem for the customers. So this phase is typically characterized by developing a simple, maybe even a mock-up, or maybe even a WordPress website. But as we see here, it is you can even use mean to generate a basic mock-up to validate your idea. And typically you will have high-touch interviews with a handful of target users to make sure that you are working on a problem that many users are looking to solutions for. The second phase would be a product market fit, where you would have a MVP which you expose to a set of users, and again you would keep on working through a set of features till you get to a set of features which the customers find useful. Once you have a good product market fit, the third phase will be the growth phase, wherein you grow your startup and acquire more and more customers for your startup. So to illustrate this, we'll just take as an example a startup which is trying to build a restaurant, restaurant discovery. So this is a startup which wants to help people discover great restaurants. The stage one would be the problem solution fit. So as usual, because they are starting out, there would be a lot of uncertainty. Because of the uncertainty, there would be an inability to commit resources to this particular project, and the startup would want to release quickly so that they can get buy-in from their customers. So startup would start by defining a problem, saying that, okay, are customers really enthusiastic about an app in which you can search for restaurants by their ratings? So you'll start by, because you're short on resources, you'll start by getting a one full stack JavaScript developer, and maybe you choose the mean stack for developing your initial product. So you'll get started with the mean stack. So it's very easy to get started with the mean stack. All that you have to do is you install the basic packages like npm and bower, and then you would install the Yeoman generator, the MEAN.JS generator, and a single command MEAN.JS would generate the boilerplate code for our mean application. Now we want to ask the users whether they would be interested in finding good restaurants by their rating. So obviously we would require some object or class called restaurant. So in the mean parlance, adding a restaurant would be by adding a CRUD module. A generator command would generate all the required code on the client side as well on the server side for the restaurant object. The initial code that is generated has a very few fields in it. It just has the name and the user related to it and so on. But we want to have ratings, so we will quickly edit the model, the server model, and add ratings to the restaurant object that we define. This is how the generated code would look like. It will The generated code will have both the server side as well as client side components. The server side app is an Express.js application, and the client side single page application is based on AngularJS. The server side app has modules for, and because we generated the restaurant modules, it will have modules for restaurant, which are the controller modules and the server models. And on the client side as well, it will have all the models for restaurant. This restaurant module will have all the typical Angular modules like controllers, directives, services, views, so on and so forth.
So Mayuresh, one question that just came up is, what is the best IDE for MEAN stack? What do you typically use to sort of drive your dev environment?
That's a good question. So typically we use WebStorm, which is a very good IDE for developing JavaScript code, and it has very good functionality to help you develop code with the MEAN stack. But that apart, there are many other IDEs so all the code is very simple, and if required you can use very simple editors like VI to edit your code. But it would be recommended to use WebStorm as the IDE of choice. So once you are done making all your changes, you would just run your server using the grunt command, and the website would be available on your a server running on your local host. So you would be able to see this website on your local host. So as we saw, developing this initial website was nearly as simple as developing a page on WordPress or developing a mockup. So in this way you can use you can use the MEAN stack to quickly have something up which you can show to the customers, and you can ask customers whether this is some kind of application which they really think would solve their problems to develop fully. So with the MEAN stack, we quickly had a running demo which is responsive, has user sign up, and we can use this to validate the problem solution. So moving on to stage 2, this is where the startup would typically look for a product market fit, do metrics based quantitative research, and keep on changing features depending on customer feedback, and take the modified product again back to customers quickly, and the cycle would continue. So this is where we would go through this whole cycle of build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, till we go to a good product fit. So let's take an example of what would happen here. Suppose you release this application out to customers and you show it to a control group and everyone likes it, but you get the feedback from customers that, oh, this is great, but I am in New York and this is suggesting me restaurants which are in San Francisco. Can you add something? It will be really useful if you can add some geolocation to this so that it will give me restaurants which are near to my place. So you hear this feedback from from a control set, and you decide that this would be a good feature to add to your product. So the way you would go about in the MEAN stack is, because the MEAN stack is a very opinionated stack. It decides that this is the correct way to have your directory structure. This is the way to name your files and everything. But the side effect is that you have a very good directory structure and you know exactly which files you would want to change to add this geolocation to your product. So you would quickly edit your models, add geolocation, add business logic in the controllers to search for places near the geolocation, and the choice of MongoDB that the MEAN stack has made as the database helps a lot when you are making these sort of changes. Because typically what happens is that if you are using a LAMP stack or some other stack, you have an object relationship manager mapper and ORM, and you have a different database, and you have to make sure that your ORM and the database like MySQL remains in sync. So if you add any property to a model in your code, you also have to make sure that the table in the database, you add the property to the table in the database as well. And there are many instances in which you forget to add it in one place or the other, and you run into problems. But MongoDB is a schema-less database, so you don't have to worry about changing anything in Mongo. All the schema that for your objects is controlled in code, so it's very easy to just change code and have new fields in your object that you're storing in MongoDB. So with this, you add the geolocation, adds the business logic around geolocation, and the time. So what happens here is the time and effort required to integrate feedback from customers and to build out new features is minimal, because you're not spending any time in doing all the grunt work. Most of the code is generated, you just go and change in some places and you get your new feature out to the customers. So in this way you will iterate till you get to a set of features which deliver value to a set of customers, and the customers are really happy with your product, and hence you know that you have found a product market fit, and then you can think about then growing your user base in the next phase.
So Mayuresh, if we may take a little pause and address a few questions that came in while we were going through stage 2.
Sure.
So one is about test framework, and I know in your first slide you had talked about testing a little bit, but specifically, how do you drive testing through unit test frameworks as well as the bigger Mocha Karma kind of frameworks? So if you could talk a little bit in more detail on how testing happens in the MEAN stack.
Sure, Ashish. So I will be covering that in after a few slides. So I'll just hold on to that question for now, and if after a couple of slides, if it's not clear, we can come back to this. Is that okay?
And then the other question that came up was around identity management. So if typically you're dealing with a customer-facing app, one of the first things you have to worry about is how to manage creating IDs. And sometimes you would want to for people to quickly log in by using their Facebook ID and so on. So what does MEAN stack do for us in terms of being able to cover the identity management topic?
That's a very good question. So that's a good observation that mostly you would require some kind of user authentication, user management. So the MEAN stack integrates Passport.js as a framework of choice. So Passport.js allows social authentication, as well as it allows you to create user profiles and allows you to have people come into your website, register themselves. It also allows people to log in using their LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter accounts. So using Passport.js, MEAN stack gives you this facility of getting quick logins out of the door, so you don't spend a lot of time coding that stuff yourself.
Okay.
Any other questions, Ashish, at this point?
No, I think that did answer a few questions that popped up. And again, I would remind the attendees to keep sending us questions. I think these are all good questions, and we want to keep this as interactive as possible. So let's have those questions keep coming in. So with that, Mayuresh, over to you then.
Sure. So let's move on to the third stage of the startup, which is typically the growth stage. So in the growth stage, there are two aspects to growth. One aspect obviously is growing your customer base, so that now that you have found the product market fit, you would want to grow your customer base either by having a paid growth, that is by advertising. You may have sticky growth, so that all the customers that are using your app stay with you and new customers keep coming in. You would also have viral growth. Your app suddenly becomes popular and you put in something in your app which helps it go viral, and a lot of people start using it quickly. But whatever way you grow, one of the problems is on the technical side, that how do you handle all this growth that is happening? How do you handle all the customers that are coming in? How do you handle the thousands of requests that are happening to your website and so on? So the solution for this is multifold. One is writing automated tests, so that you make sure that everything that you are releasing is always good. You are not worried about releasing new things to a large set of people. Continuous integration to make sure that all your check-ins are getting tested. Easy deployment, so that you don't waste hands on deployment, but you keep everyone building new features. And scaling of the last but not the least, but scaling the servers to handle all the load that is thrown on it. So automated tests. So this can typically come in the stage 2 or stage 3. So if you are a very, very good startup, you may make sure that in your initial phases itself that you write all your tests, but typically this gets left out till stage 3. And so what MEAN stack gives you for test is that it creates so it generates boilerplate code for server-side tests as well as client-side tests. And the recommendation is to use Mocha to test server-side logic. Mocha, as most of you know, is it allows you to write very easy to read tests in the BDD syntax. And on the client side, MEAN recommends that you use the Jasmine framework to write the test, and Karma is used as the test runner on the client side to test this on various browsers. So all these three things together, Mocha, Karma and Jasmine, allow you to have automated tests which test your server side as well as client side logic and make sure that you are not breaking anything. So MEAN stack also generates a Travis file. So Travis is a very good tool for continuous integration, and the starter file helps you to get your code integrated into Travis very quickly. The Travis integration provides a very good way to test each check-in, and if you extend the basic Travis file, you can also write scripts so that each pull request that is generated by your developers gets tested before it is merged to the trunk. So what continuous integration does is it allows you to be confident that all the code that you are pushing out to your customers is well tested. One more problem that you face is deployment. So typically you would want to deploy on Amazon or DigitalOcean, or some people prefer Heroku. So for deployment on Amazon or DigitalOcean, there is an inbuilt Docker file and fig.yml files which define how this MEAN stack can be deployed on Docker. and you can use this file Docker deployments to deploy on Amazon or DigitalOcean. Also, there is an inbuilt proc file which helps in easy deployments on Heroku. So using this, you can have quick deployments on public facing servers and enable to get your product to customers faster. As your requirements grow, as your products grow, your code base also becomes huge. And typically, we started from a single developer when this restaurant app was in the initial stage, but now it would typically have a lot of people, a lot of developers working on this app, and the code base would also keep on increasing as more and more features are added. Code maintainability starts becoming a problem at this stage. So the way MEAN.JS stack helps in this is that the code is structured in such a way that the separation, all the code which handles different things is separated into different folders, different file structures. For example, the client and server code is totally separate in separate files. On the client, the server, services, controllers, views are separated into different files. On the server, the models and controllers are separated into different files. Typically, different developers would work on different aspects of the project and hence would end up working on different folders or different files. This would allow a lot of developers to work on the code in parallel, check in parallel, and since we have the CI and automated test setup, they can check in all their code, and once it is deployed, the end-to-end cases written in Karma will make sure that everything is running fine. Last but not the least, scaling of the servers. Node.js provides asynchronous non-blocking I/O, which allows the node server to serve a large number of simultaneous requests. So Node.js technology has been used for quite some time now by very large scale systems like in NetApp and some companies where there are really large systems, they use NetApp as the server. So Node is a proven technology for scaling up. Also, MongoDB has been used in production by a lot of companies, and it is proven to scale for large data as well as large number of I/O operations. So since these two technologies are used on the backend, there is no the server can scale up to handle all the growth that is happening on your customer side. So this is how we went through the 3 stages of lean startup and used the MEAN stack to solve some of the typical problems that the lean startups encounter.
So Mairesh, maybe we should take a quick pause here and try and address some of the questions coming up. So one question is around, the Karma, Mocha, Jasmine that you talked about in terms of test framework. So the question is this just plain old JavaScript, or the developer need to learn something new to make these test frameworks work for them?
The code is written in plain JavaScript. You don't need to learn a new language for this. If the users are not familiar with BDD or the language used to describe these tests, then there would be some learning curve. when the user learns how to describe the test in either Jasmine or Mocha. So as far as the language goes, there is no learning curve, but as far as the test descriptions go, there can be a slight learning curve where the user learns how to write test cases in that particular format.
Right, right. Okay, okay. Then the next question is around data visualization and sort of reporting. So are there any tools available within the Node ecosystem that basically help you do charting or data visualization quickly within the context of MEAN stack?
So generally the visualization, data visualization is done on the client side. So AngularJS has a lot of plugins, charting plugins and data manipulation, so simple plugins like a data grid or Angular charts or Angular graphs can be used, and the Angular views that we saw can be changed to use the data which is returned through the Angular services and the REST APIs provided by Node, and the graphs or data grids can be put on top of that data, so that layer does not need to be changed, but you can add new views by using Angular, and that would help in getting data visualization as per your choice.
Okay. And then there's another question more around, and I think you touched upon it in the passing, when in the very beginning you talked about you need a full stack JavaScript developer, and so the question more around skill set. So as the application starts scaling and more people join the team and so on, could you give a little color around skill set in the context of a larger team?
Sure.
When you're growing the team, now the team needs to have everybody, all developers need to be full stack, or is there some way to, bring in more junior developers into the mix?
Sure, Ashish. So I'll just move on to the next slide while answering this question. So one of the drawbacks that MEAN has, for example, also leads to this question is, on the server side we use Node. We talked about Node using asynchronous non-blocking I/O, but the same asynchronous way of writing code can become a problem as your code grows. So starting out, we started with a single developer who was writing simple Node.js code, but as the code on the Node.js side or the server side starts becoming complex, you tend to have a lot of callbacks in the code, and because everything is asynchronous, and if the person who is writing code on the server side is not experienced, he may end up writing code which is like 10 levels of callbacks. So there you would require an experienced programmer who knows how to use the promises framework, for example, and so that this asynchronous code is written in a good maintainable way. So as you grow, you will typically not have full stack developers working on this, but you would have client-side experts working on the AngularJS part. You would have server-side experts working on the Node.js part. You may even have someone who is an expert on MongoDB work on defining the models and to interact with MongoDB. Also, the less experienced or junior developers could come into places like the controllers, which are pretty simple and which don't really require great coding skills. So there some junior developers could be fit in. So does that answer your question? Does that answer the question approximately?
I think it does, and I would welcome the the poster to actually ask a subsequent question if that does not.
Okay.
So another related question to this skill set question is team sizing, and in a sense, you're a startup. You're just starting off, on the path of building something out. Is there a critical mass of a number of developers you need in order to work with MEAN.JS? Is it one? Is it a team of 5, or what is it?
So typically to start out, one developer is good, but as you grow, what we have seen works is typically a team of 3 to 4 developers with a recommended size of 4 developers with one QA working with them. So we don't typically need a lot of QAs because the developer generally write a lot of automated tests so that a lot of code gets tested automatically on deploy with the continuous integration that goes on. But 4 developers to 1 developer specializing on backend, 1 developer specializing on Angular, and 2 developers who are more of generalist is a mix that we have seen working very well with these kind of startups and the MEAN stack.
Right. So I'm doing a quick time check. It's around 11:45, and we do have more questions coming in. So I just wanted to make sure, Mayuresh, you get an opportunity to sort of wrap up your presentation, and then we will. I'll encourage the attendees to keep sending your questions. We'll have last 15 minutes on pure Q&A.
Sure.
So over to you, Mayuresh.
So I'll just quickly go through the drawbacks. So one of the drawbacks that we mentioned was having an inexperienced programmer writing bad code on Node.js. Then the other drawback, so opinionated stack, MEAN opinionated stack is an advantage, but it also is a disadvantage. So if you want to move out Angular and put in ext.js, or if you want to move out Express and want to put in Sail.js, once you do that, you lose all the advantages of the MEAN that this MEAN.js stack offers you, because the code generators won't work well. So that's a bit of a disadvantage when you are working with the MEAN.js stack. So in closing, I would just like to say that we saw that how the restaurant discovery startup using lean principles went through the stages from conception to growth utilizing the MEAN stack, and we saw how the various components of the MEAN stack helped in setting up continuous integration, testing, deployment, quick turnaround times in terms of adding new features and so on. So overall, MEAN stack is along with many others. So obviously there are many frameworks that people use to run their lean startups. Everyone has their framework of choice, but MEAN stack is a good candidate as a tech stack for a lean startup. So with that, I'm done with whatever I wanted to present. I'm open for questions. So if anyone has any questions, we can go through those. Or if Ashish, you want to go through the next slides, we'll go through those.
Yeah, so let's quickly cover the next slide. So from a presentation completeness standpoint, we are well covered. So I just wanted to leave this information with our attendees. Synerzip is an agile software product development partner, and we've done a lot of work for early stage startups as well as more later stage companies to bring solutions out quickly, to accelerate your product roadmap, and essentially to add capacity to your development staff. You have ways of reaching out to us. You could reach out to me directly, or either through our Twitter channel or LinkedIn or Facebook. Now, Mayuresh, if you could flip to the next slide. So I'm not going to go through this, slide by slide, but essentially we work as a partner for you. We believe the success of our clients directly translates to our success, and by success we essentially mean the startup idea that you have in mind has to succeed in winning customers, and your business flourishes. Our team typically is deeply technical, people who have dedicated themselves to a technology path throughout the career, and because we're technology agnostic, we have people in various technologies, so depending on what our customer needs, we can pull together a team very, very quickly. And of course, there's the economics of offshore and so on. So if Meresh, we could go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a quick list of our clients, and I think that's that. So yeah, so let's go to the next slide, and I just wanted to quickly take a minute to introduce you to the next webinar. And this one is more along the agile webinar track. We talk of team ownership and what does it mean, how do we make it happen. And this one is by Pollyanna Pixton. She's an author and an established agile practitioner. So again, this is hopefully going to be a great session as well. And this is coming up on 17th of June. So the registration link would be up in a couple of, soon enough, I guess, in a couple of days at least.
It's available on our homepage.
Oh, it is available. Okay, good. So, so with that, Meresh, maybe we can go back to looking at the questions. And so one of the questions is around load balancing and sort of horizontal scaling. So when we are trying to sort of scale up the application from a horizontal standpoint, we have multiple servers taking in incoming calls, and we want to do load balancing. What happens in the mean stack world, and how is it any different from what you might do in other technology stacks?
So the way you would scale up is first you will see where the scaling is required. So if it is mainly around the data, where your data is growing, so you would create a MongoDB cluster instead of having a single MongoDB server. And also on the node side, since we are having REST APIs, it is all stateless. And typically what you would do is put in more node servers, and we'll create Docker images for the node server, so that it is very easy to just replicate your node server, your setup, and quickly scale horizontally. So this is, I would say, not very different than what you would typically do. But typically a node server would not, a single node server handles many more connections than a typical IIS server or a typical PHP server. So you would not need to deploy more servers as early as you would in some other technologies.
Okay. And then next question is more around socket IO and WebSockets, and if you could elaborate a little bit on how WebSockets work within the mean stack, and I guess is there a plugin or something within Node that allows you to do WebSockets?
Yes, there are plugins available in Node which allow you to do WebSockets. On the client side, also there are certain plugins. I'm not able to recall names of particular plugins right now, but there are popular plugins which can be quickly added to your to the Node and Angular modules and to give you the functionality of WebSockets.
And I do see some questions around more specifics of, specific problems you're facing with respect to mean stack or specific technology pieces. And I would encourage you to reach out to us directly via email. You have my email ID already in the presentation. So feel free to send out those questions via email, because that would require a more one-on-one consultation. A few other questions. There's a question around, is there a specific, would you recommend any reference book or reading to kind of quickly come up to speed in MEAN? I don't know, Mayuresh, if you have anything off the top of your mind.
So I would recommend that I won't recommend learning via books, because these technologies, MEAN is quite a recent, so the individual technologies have been around, but MEAN.JS as a stack or the MEAN whole stack, so it is better off that you take a look at the MEAN.JS website, you take a look at there are a lot of blogs which are written which help you to set up MEAN.JS and so on. So I would recommend more of reading up-to-date articles on the web rather than trying to learn this from a book. Also, because since it is very easy to get started, it does not require a lot of investment to get or time investment to get started with the MEAN stack. A recommended way of learning is to just quickly install the MEAN stack and look at a couple of example applications so that you get a good feel of the various parts of the MEAN stack. So that's how I would recommend learning the MEAN stack rather than reading a book.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the key to mastering any technology is indeed to get your hands dirty. You got to build something, even if it's imaginary app. Just build something, see how it works, see how it plays out. And like a lot of our listeners might know, often the specific versions or platform version interactions, those kind of things sometimes can get to you. So it's not possible to sort of cover all corner cases in a book. Now another question, Mayuresh, is so there might be situations where let's say you have a SQL database which already has a lot of information in it. You can't quite get rid of it. You cannot transition to a MongoDB database. So does the fact that now you're dealing with a SQL Server database with a schema to worry about and so on, does that lessen the punch of MEAN stack, or does that mean that the MEAN stack won't make sense in those kind of situations?
Can you come again, Ashish? I got confused in the question. So are we trying to say?
The question is, so the question is, let's say there is, there's already a SQL database somewhere in the company. You're trying to build a new application that leverages that data, and there's no real way of getting rid of that SQL database because, other applications are using it. The data is important, so it can't be, you can't really, transition it over to Mongo, or and maybe it's a single system record. So how does MEAN stack work with a relational database or an existing system?
So Ashish, the MEAN stack out of the box the MEAN stack as is defined that we saw right now won't work with a relational database, but all the technologies that we just saw, for example, Node and Express does work with relational databases. So there are plugins available which allow you to work with MySQL. But again, once you do that, you won't really be able to leverage, as we said, one of the drawbacks was all the auto-generated code assumes that you are using MongoDB as the backend. So you won't be able to leverage all the auto-generated code. But yeah, you can leverage all the code for the routes, the REST API backend, and AngularJS, and for the models, the database models, you would have to write your own code. So with that compromise, you will be still able to use the other parts of the MEAN stack apart from Mongo and have an application built with Node, Angular, with MySQL as a backend.
Okay. And so we have just about 1 more minute left on this call. So I'll just...
just 1 minute. So Ashish, I think someone had asked about, I just recalled that there's a good book on MEAN web development by Amos Haviv. Amos Haviv is the author of MEAN, MEAN.io, MEAN.io, and now MEAN.JS. And he has written a book on MEAN web development. So that's a good book to get started that introduces the MEAN stack and the concepts in a good way. So anyone wanting to read a book can read that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so you're just about out of time, and I do see one more question, which is about is MEAN a good choice for multi-device mobile application? And I believe we have covered this topic, that if you are trying to build a mobile app, a native mobile app, you would have to write that code separately. It's not part of the MEAN stack.
Right, you're absolutely right, Ashish. So the MEAN stack code generators don't generate native mobile code. So it's recommended that you write native mobile code separately and leverage the REST APIs which are provided by the Node server and call those from your native code. And also,
and if you were writing a hybrid app, in that case, you know, Angular could be a framework you could use. But other than that, there's probably not a whole lot you do on the MEAN stack side.
Right, sure.
Okay. So with that, we are
development framework.
Right. Okay, so with that, we are at the end of time. I really appreciate everybody joining in. And this was a great session with some really good questions coming from our audience. And I'll remind you one more time to keep an eye out for the recorded version on our YouTube channel. And it's never too early to go register for the next session around team ownership. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, and you all have a good afternoon.
Thanks everybody for listening in to this webinar, and thanks for all the great questions that you asked. Okay, thanks.